So I'm having difficulty containing my giddiness for this video. I, you know what? Let me take a second, actually. Let's look up Germaine, or is that her? I think she's an Australian. Germaine, is that a man's name? It's kind of weird. Germaine Greer, Australian writer and public intellectual. Regarded as one of the major voices of the second wave feminist movement. I don't like getting into the tidbits. Here's the thing. Whenever analyzing a foe or an enemy, you only want to go in so deep. Don't go too deep. I also like to say, you have to truly and compassionately understand your opponent's argument so that you can effectively defeat it. But with something it's almost like debating flat earthers. When their initial or grounding premise, even though I'm all for equal rights under the law, it's not about two individuals being equal, but under the law, for the most part, being treated equally. Now, take note of how different that is to a true meritocracy. A true meritocracy doesn't actually do that. It doesn't actually treat two individuals as though they're equal. A true meritocracy judges one individual versus any other individual or individuals based on their individual merit, meaning not treating them blindly. But that's sort of segueing into another topic. Anyway, with feminists, I treat it like flat earthers. I don't like to go in too deep. You go into that rabbit hole, you get fucked up. So, especially since so many feminists don't agree. I mean, what are you going to? You're getting to the minutia of quicksand. They don't agree on anything. They'll. I mean, what I'm about to a good point of this video is going to get into the Ouroboros, the snake eating itself of the SJW phenomena, right? This woman is she's an old girl, if you will, part of the old guard of feminism, and like Margaret Atwood. Look at what happened to Margaret Atwood when she clashed heads or banged heads with the Me Too movement, and she had a friend or acquaintance who was being attacked or accused of impropriety, and she was defending him, and then she got backlash, and now she's shutting the fuck up because so with this phenomenon, you usually see it's younger feminists who are attacking older feminists seemingly not able to get on the same page or get with the program. They're not as woke to the realities of oppression that younger feminists see today, especially when it comes to intersectionality. And it seems Germaine, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Germaine Greer is having trouble with that intersectionality aspect of it, and not really. Maybe for I'd love to really actually sit her down and ask her some questions, because I want to know what the hooking point is of not, I suppose, sharing your oppression with I guess cis males who identify as women or who transition into women, not sharing the burden. I mean, because that's from what I've heard of from other feminists, more of the level-headed, I would say, reasonable feminists. The whole intersectionality thing is more about identifying that everyone has, I guess everyone except white men, but everyone has some sort of struggle, kampf, and it's worthwhile to investigate what might be this person's individual yet shared struggle as they're represented in society. And to some extent, I can agree with that. I can say, yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, it's I think more meaningful just to consider an individual on its own individual merit. Now, when it comes to politics, sure, you can group that stuff up, and it makes it easier to politicize and argue for or defend in a political environment. But yeah, that's a topic for another discussion. Now, so with this Greer chick, I'd love to understand what gets stuck in her craw when she cannot share the oppression with transgendered individuals. It seems as though she might be upset. I think there's a bit of some resentment towards men. I get. I mean, if she really takes the feminist, or hardcore feminist sort of worldview seriously, men enjoy this innate privilege, right? And here's a man enjoying, he's essentially getting the ultimate having his cake and eating it too. He gets to enjoy the benefits of being a man, or at least growing, developing some majority of his life, or significant part of his life, his formative years as a man, enjoying all those benefits. And then, when he feels like it, jumping over the fence and now enjoying the benefits of being a woman. Which I'm surprised she would even say that there are benefits. But in another interview, not this one, maybe I haven't seen this one to the end yet. She said that there, the transgendered male to female individuals are enjoying the limelight of being women. So that was really interesting. I'd love to sort of pick at her brain. Well, let's watch this. I couldn't contain my giddiness. It's so funny to see someone who argues, and I'm using her. This was even before I did a cursory look at who the fuck this bitch was. It's so funny to watch someone who's essentially a poster child for the sort of maniacal worldview of female oppression in the modern age, when women enjoy some of the most how it's conveniences, some of the greatest conveniences of just living in the modern world, in large part due to science and technology. Science and technology shortening or narrowing the gap between men and women physically. The physical stature differences have been narrowed by science and technology, so women can compete for a lot of the same positions that men compete for, and the stuff that men predominantly could do in the past is done by machines now, and you don't need that menial labor. So thanks to science and technology, women are more competitive these days, and also thanks to certain laws and certain activism. Of course, yes, I agree with any of those things from the standpoint of equal treatment under the law, which isn't necessarily meritocracy, or really at all. I don't want to segue again, but yeah. So it's funny to see that individual with that mindset, then almost without any self-consciousness, levy what men in her day would have levied against her as an ardent feminist against a minority group that makes the same claims, if not more, of oppression today. In fact, I mean, she's literally said, I don't want to say literally, but for the most part, I'm paraphrasing, said that transgendered individuals don't suffer any sort of unique oppression. It's crazy. I mean, it's not crazy in the objective sense. It's crazy that this individual is saying those things. I mean, if coming out of any normal individual, I'm like, okay, that's your opinion. But how can you really sustain that opinion in light of your entire career as an ardent second wave feminist? This is crazy. It's bizarre. But let's watch. Let's enjoy. Let me actually read a little more of this little fucking wiki here. So she lives in the UK, where she's held academic positions, English lit, of course. What else? Greer's ideas have created controversy ever since her first book, The Female Eunuch. I think I've actually heard of that one. Made her a household name, international bestseller, and a watershed text in feminist movement. Her work since then is focused on literature, feminism, and the environment. Later books include Sex and Destiny, yada yada. Greer's a an equality feminist. Yes. I love it. In the beginning of the video we're going to watch, she says, I don't like to define feminism. that cracked me the fuck up. And because the obvious reason is, I don't want to limit, because, oh God, she said, because it then becomes limited. Really? I wonder why you're concerned about the limitations of what you demand from society at the behest of the strong arm of the federal government. I wonder why you don't want that limited. I wonder why you, in fact, are espousing unlimited entitlements based from this worldview of oppression. I mean, it's similar to other minorities and their sort of angsty sense of reparations. But here it takes a unique form. She argues instead that liberation is about asserting difference and insisting on it as a condition of self-definition and self-determination, and struggle for freedom of women to define their own values. Wow, how can someone say that and take that position on transgender? Let's see. Let me look up any controversy. Archive miscellanea. Remember the gender on rape, arguments versus experience. Me too. Actually, let me segue quick into this. Garrett's made apparently contradictory remarks about the Me Too movement. In 2017, she called for women to show solidarity when other women are sexually harassed. Just before she was named Australian of the Year in Britain in 2018, she said she had always wanted to see women react immediately to sexual harassment as it occurs. What makes it different is when the man has the economic power, as Harvey Weinstein has. But if you spread your legs because he said, "Be nice to me and I'll give you a job in a movie," then I'm afraid that's tantamount to consent. Holy shit! So there's some feminists, honestly, it's a mixture of level-headedness, of holy shit, this is a woman of age, of some experience, who understands not all these issues are black and white. Yes, there are some women who lie about rape or who use their sexuality to their own advantage, and within those power differences, they can gain some benefit. So she's stuck in this weird, almost this trifecta of aged wisdom from anyone individual of her. She's in her 70s, I guess, would have about human nature, something that a young feminist today doesn't have, and thereby can lead them to say such silly things like listen and believe. Even though it almost sounds like she's saying that, but she's hedging herself. She's saying listen and believe, but yes, there are women who will essentially hawk their wares for a social benefit here or there, or personal financial benefit, however you see it. So this is an interesting individual to study, as it relates to the air of Me Too and activism and LGBT community or whatever. So let me see. I'll give you the job in the movie. And it's too late now to start whinging about that. In May that year, she argued of the high-profile cases that disclosure was dishonorable because women who claimed to have been outraged 20 years ago had been paid to sign non-disclosure agreements, then had spoken out once the statute of limitations said, "Yeah, I can get her. I see her point of view. That's perfectly reasonable. It's strange that she's reasonable in that sense. That's perfectly reasonable." I've always argued, especially if you watch Vegan Gangs as of late, he's on this, I don't know, it's almost maniacal at this end, but he's got all sorts of psychological problems, so I guess that's just par for the course for him. But he's on this weird bent of attacking, what's the guy's name? Dorian Ryder or something? I don't know the guy's real name. Vegan cyclist or whatever the fuck he is. On this, I guess this claim, this allegation, actually, but he's not saying it as an allegation. He's just calling the guy a rapist. I don't know. I'm not an investigator. I don't have the tools or the ability to investigate a rape charge by myself. And certainly, I can't just use somebody else's testimony and they're saying, "Oh, this guy raped me," and therefore he raped him, or he or whomever raped this person. Testimony alone can't convict somebody. I don't believe it should, because testimony is highly flawed, and witness testimony especially has been historically documented as just highly flawed. So even if the guy looks like a piece of shit in that case, like with Dorian Ryder, so in that sense, I'm always saying, rape itself that accusation, the whole case of rape, is very serious, but it's also very complex and difficult to investigate. So leave it to the experts, leave it to those individuals who are best tooled to investigate that. Don't come out with your guns blazing just because it's someone you know or your friend or whatever, and say, "Oh well, yeah, she's a rape victim. That's the person who raped her." Look at the little small pot of hot water, Talcum X, or that's what I call him. What's his name? Sean King got himself in when he was defending that woman who clearly lied about being raped or sexually assaulted by a police officer, and luckily that police officer had a body cam on. So I always say, you know, be very, very careful about these accusations, and wait for the evidence. This whole listen and believe is insanity. It upends the entire justice system, the entire premise of our justice system, which is innocence until proven guilty. So it's weird that this woman has this strange mixture of these beliefs. But it's funny. So let me get to the fucking videos. It's taking forever. Here it is.
I'm Germaine Greer. Germaine, thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure, Mike.
How do you define feminism, and do you believe the name of this movement matters, and if so, why?
I choose not to define feminism, because to define something is to limit it. And you define in terms of the present, where we are now. So you can't very easily see how the definition will change as time changes and priorities change. You know, the world has changed enormously since I wrote Female Eunuch. And it now doesn't, the problems that face young women today are really different, and in some ways terrible, and not predicted.
In some ways terrible? I mean, there are novel ways to construe that, right? But you're living in, I mean, take sex and gender out of it. Just the average person lives as like a king would not even 1,000 years ago, less than 1,000 years ago. I mean, we live, especially if we're talking about a Western, a modern Western lifestyle, and throwing words like oppression, relative oppression, I guess you could use. You could use the term like relative oppression, but to say, oh my God, sometimes terror? What? Now this is me jumping the gun, but maybe she has an interesting way of defining that.
Certainly not by me. What was the next bit? Oh, does it matter what the movement is called? I think it does a bit. We now have equality feminism. Everyone thinks that's fine. Women should get paid the same as men. Women should be able to go in the army. Women should be able to be in the front line, carry weapons, blah, blah, blah. As if men's lives were the desideratum. We just want to have what they've got. But I don't think we do. They've got a lot of stuff that we don't terribly want. Like an enormous array of pornography, for example. That's the biggest cultural product on earth is pornography. And very few women use it, even after 50 Shades of Grey.
I'm not really sure what she's saying. We don't want men's pornography? Were women banned from porn? I mean, I don't. Does she want? I don't understand. From the standpoint of equality feminism, that is, getting what men were getting that women weren't able to get, how does pornography fit into that context? I really don't understand it at all. That almost sounds like a almost Victorian or even hurry up and put on the burqa type of, protect our women from the male gaze sort of. I don't understand. Where is she coming from with that?
I would say I'm not an equality feminist. That's, to me, equality is profoundly conservative aim. It wouldn't change anything. We'd be doing the same stuff that men do. It's just we'd have different plumbing. I've always been a liberation feminist. So for me, it's women's liberation is the idea. And that means that I can't tell you what's around the corner. Because I don't know. If women were free to assert their own priorities, what would they do? I'm 76 now, and it's not up to me to say to people your age what you should be aiming at. I know what I long for you to aim at, like world peace, as if you were going to be Miss World. Peace would be good, but we don't look like having any anytime soon.
At a very young age,
Few boys would disagree with the statement that girls should have the same rights and opportunities as they do. However, when they reach adolescence, many become silent on the topic, they pick up slurs and possibly judge girls' bodies. Do you think this is an inevitable phase they endure, or is there a way to preserve the mindset they used to have concerning their view of women?
Well, let me put it another way. You know, when a boy is small, he's his mother's best friend. He's the person who understands when she's unhappy and who will dry her eyes and say, don't mind, Mum, it'll be okay. But then it gets to the point where he has to become accepted by masculine society. So that's the moment when he says to his mother who's driving him to school, don't drop me at the school gate. And don't kiss me.
What the fuck is she talking about? Look, there's a certain age where it has nothing to do with gender or sex. Both boys and girls, once they reach middle school, they start distancing themselves because now their peer group becomes more important than their parents. It has nothing to do with gender or sex. What the fuck is she talking about? This is a celebrated intellectual? That's basic child development. Their peer groups become more important than their parents. It has nothing to do with gender or sex.
And he's suddenly all, this boy who loved to cuddle is now all elbows and knees. And masculinity is tough to learn. They're taught not to cry. Tough becoming a boy. It's as tough as it is becoming a girl.
How do you handle so-called anti-feminists?
I keep my hands off them, dear. I'm not going to pet them. It's very unfashionable to be an out-and-out anti-feminist now. Male chauvinist pigs used to make a big display of their lack of respect for women. I think that's, well, the thing is, the way men show their real feelings is the way they behave. And they like men better than women, and that's pretty obvious. And they enjoy each other's...
They like... So she's generalizing to all men, or maybe she's just generalizing to male chauvinist pigs, or maybe she's just generalizing to anti-feminists. Guess what? All those generalizations are unwarranted. I mean, but I guess when you're preaching to the choir, you know, you just mire yourself in your own farts and have a go at it. You know, it's like you're in an Oriental bazaar of hookah farts. I don't know. Men just like their. I mean, fuck, what does that even mean? You could say that. I mean, that's dependent on That's dependent on so many different factors.
Company. They play. They have fun. Women are awkward in that company. There isn't a niche for them unless they come on like a boy, unless they try to be.
I can make the same asinine, because it would be asinine to make that generalization of women, and make the same statement. Oh, I noticed women like to hang around women. You know, girls love going out on girls' night out. So you really ever see girls like the mixing company? I mean, they feel pressured by men, or you know, something like that. You know, that's a sign of this internalized hatred or derision women have for men. What the fuck are you talking about? It's an asinine statement. Remind you, British intellectual.
Or Mr. Steppenfetchit or whatever.
In a world in which women are still massacred and raped for having looked at a man other than their husband, could you explain why eradicating sayings such as "you throw like a girl" is still important?
Well, I don't think it is important, really. I mean, if you throw like a girl, someone should tell you. My question is a bigger question. Why do all the games women want to play, why were they all invented by men? Do we just not know how to invent a game? Now, you see, I think the answer to that question is probably yes. Because we work from the time we're little on all sorts of things. Our appearance, amongst other things. Our schoolwork, we work harder than the boys do. We do better than the boys do. We're goody-goody little people who do an awful lot of work. And we don't discover how to play. Is it important not to say? No, I think if you do throw like a girl, say.
There's so much confusion here. Granted, yes, women outperform men in basic scholarly tasks, especially at a young age. Women, girls, whatever. And from this you draw, or this leads you to believe that women have difficulty developing play or developing games, or what the fuck are you talking about? That's a complete non sequitur. Because women do well in school and are studious, it has nothing to do with whether they're able to develop games of any sort, whether it's mental or physical. Where the fuck are you coming off with? Remind yourself. British intellectual.
I'm a bit fed up with buttoning people's lips when they can't say things that are perfectly obvious.
Why are we still seeing gender roles in the media, and why does society stand for it?
Because most of society is learning a gender role. We're wedded to sex roles, we love them. And the interesting thing about even things like transgender is they're not fighting against a sex role. They start off with one, they start off as Ken, and then they want to become Barbie. But actually we live in the middle. And we'd quite like our roles to be less sharply differentiated, so that we didn't all have to be, for example, feminine. And so that unfeminine behaviour didn't cause people to look at us askance or say she's a dyke or whatever. If we take big strides, we take big strides, tough.
All right, so do you believe there are any overlaps between the injustices felt by the transgender community and the female community?
Now, the transgender issue, of which I'm mightily tired, frankly, but because I haven't said anything about it for years and years, but it's all become, it's a bit like Fathers for Justice. It's the equivalent of climbing on the roof of the Queen's Gallery. But the interesting thing to me is this, that there are men who've been married and who've had children and who believe they've been women all along. I don't believe them. Sorry, you can hold a knife to my throat, I don't believe you. But nowadays, after they've had surgery and they have gender reassignment, if they accept gender reassignment, which means changing their sex in their passport, their marriage is annulled. Now, that's not even just ended. That's annulled.
Okay, so there's a little bit in there. When does she believe? It almost sounded like she made it a matter of, oh, if you spent this much time as a man, then, you know, you're disqualified. In her opinion, you're not a woman. So is it a matter of time? What is the objective measurement you're using for, do they actually have to be born with said genitalia? And is it just genitalia? What about the, you know, are you disqualifying, you know, female or feminine, or I don't know, masculine versus feminine brain patterns, or, you know, maybe there's something more feminine about that individual's brain. I mean, because there have been correlations to transgenderism and, you know, brain patterns, so, or cognitive patterns, I should say. So, what is your metric? What is she actually using? She seems, I mean, and you notice she doesn't really want to talk about it, even though she's obviously she has a firm conviction on this opinion of hers, yet she doesn't really want to delve into it. But people are asking her because, you know, the age of feminism now is more woke than these older gals here.
Annulled. What that says is there was never a marriage. The wife is dumped and the children are bastardized. And that's the law. I can't get over that. That was never discussed. I didn't know it myself till a week ago. And I've had women writing to me saying that they've been dumped in this way and they've got nothing. And they've got no comeback. They can't.
What the fuck are you saying? Are you saying men are purposely trying to eschew or I should say abscond of their familial responsibilities, whether financial or otherwise, through changing their sex? They're trying to get away from the responsibility. Men, this is just another way, transgenderism is just another way men can oppress women by absconding of their familial duty. This is insanity. What a way to twist somebody else's perceived oppression into your own oppression. I'm telling you, this is why I was so giddy with this shit. It's insane. This Ouroboros of social justice activism. It's a delight to watch.
Claim child support or anything. So obviously something has to happen there. And they expect me to represent them. I don't think I want to do it because it's now become this silliness. It needs to be just workaday. It should probably be Baroness Kennedy who should take it on and just examine the legal basis for this, because to my mind it's absolutely shocking. And these women made their vows in complete innocence, and now suddenly bang. However, there's another issue, which is much more important, which is genuine intersex, which is something else again, which is where a baby is born with ambiguous genitalia, for whatever reason. The Council of Europe has found, and you can only agree with them, that to inflict surgery on newborns because their genitalia don't match up to some idea of what is correct for one sex or the other, to operate on them is completely unethical, because they then have to deal with the sequelae of that operation, which they never had a chance to choose, and the sequelae are often bad. Hundreds of these operations are carried out all the time. So if you're talking transphobia, in my mind, that's it right there. Intersex phobia. That means you cannot leave that child alone.
So notice she didn't want to define feminism, but she really wants to define transphobia. I wonder why. Does that leave you out of the purview of the petard that would be thrown when people are accusing you of transphobia? That real transphobia is this whatever the formality is with treatment of intersex individuals and whatever. I don't know if I guess it's in the UK. There's a good argument for doing that. I mean, just off the top of my head, one could imagine that. I guess because you'd have to give the opportunity for that individual to make a informed consent decision on their treatment, at least around puberty. Because if you let it go on too long, some of the changes are reversible. So it's kind of, do you want to just, give them a better position for life and development at an earlier age, just have the operation anyway, or let them have some of these non-reversible changes and then leave it to a later time when they are more capable of making an informed. So that is a moral dilemma. It's not, it's not this whole, oh my God, that's transphobia. That's an actual moral dilemma. Yeah, because if you're just going on the basis of, well, these kids didn't have the right to, well, then you'd be against any sort of procedure at that age of infancy or at birth, like with a circumcision or some other procedure, especially if it's just cosmetic.
Today, many female role models are found in the music and film industry. However, these performers are often seen wearing provocative and revealing outfits. So should young girls be appreciating this as women who are proud of their bodies and who have control over their image to the world? Or is this not something we should applaud, and that in fact these women are being forced by their industry to exploit their sex appeal in order to stay afloat?
Wouldn't you like to think that, that it was like that? They want you to play a sex scene in a movie, and you don't want to play it, then you don't get cast in the movie. It's tough out there. My difficulty is at a different level, which is when you've got young women who want to go out on the town. Guys don't date anymore, so the girls get together and buy a bottle of vodka from the super.
Hold on. I don't know if it's her age. Where's she coming up with these statements? Guys don't date anymore. What does that mean? Wait. It's not young people don't date anymore. It's men don't date anymore. because historically it's been the men who chose who to date, right? It's the men who choose whether or not to date. Or what the fuck are you talking about? That doesn't make sense from so many avenues. I'm taking the great measure of my mind and I'm attacking that statement in any fucking way I can think of, and every way it fails. What the fuck do you mean guys don't date anymore? What the But that's not, it doesn't stop there. She's gonna say something else. What else?
Market and get half tanked and then go out, and they dress in a fashion to be noticed. They wear what they consider to be hot gear, which the guys interpret as an invitation, and they want an adventure. Well, there's really only one adventure they're going to get. And
she could be taking this in an interesting way, but so far I mean, honestly, this was an unnecessary premise. Guys don't date anymore. Somehow this leads to women liquoring themselves up and being provocative to get, sexual attention from men. Okay.
the chances are that they'll be the worse for it. And so what am I going to say to them? Stay home or wear a tracksuit? What am I going to say? She's put a lot of thought into.
Wait, chances are these actual statistics that when a woman gets liquored up and is provocative and is currying sexual attention from men, chances are, statistically speaking, the probability is that she'll be the worse for it. something bad will happen. Very vague statements here.
Showing her best bits. And every now and then something happens that gives you an idea of what that looks like from a guy's point of view. There was an extraordinary event in Australia where soldiers who dated women who got very drunk and fell about.
You can't use Australians as any sort of representative group or sample. They were a former prison colony. They are descendants of very, very dysgenic, is that the term, I think? Dysgenic gene pool. So they're Australians are just a bad lot. You can't use them as a representative of humanity.
Had photographed them with spread legs lying in the street and all sorts. The sort of picture that if your mother saw it, she would weep herself blind. They were just horrible. And so there you were thinking, how dumb do you have to be to get yourself into that situation? But is that the only good time that girls can have now? How do you go out and have a really hot, adventurous, fun?
So, let me encapsulate the whole thing. So because men won't date women anymore, what? So I guess MGTOW, in her mind, MGTOW is one. Because men aren't dating anymore, and women are seeking adventure. These are the premises leading to the conclusion. Women, therefore, are somehow she's asking is so it's a little bit up in the air there. Are somehow seeing their options limited, and because they're seeking adventure, they feel like they have to put themselves in these precarious situations. So at the end of the day, it's really men's fault. that some women are getting drunk off their ass, and it's not the individual man who took those shots, right, or assaulted her in whatever way. It's men in general that have created the environment in which women have to make these bad choices because they naively or innocently are seeking adventure. Wow, this is a so-called British intellectual.
Time without running that risk.
And finally, so your name has appeared recently in the media as a result of student protests at Cardiff University against a talk you planned on giving. So disregarding the topic of those protests, what's your opinion on the culture that's erupted recently on college and university campuses where they protest and shut down talks given by or about people whose opinions the students believe to be wrong?
The idea of no platforming people because you have a view we don't agree with, you're not allowed to talk about anything. That's ridiculous. And it's especially ridiculous at a university because the soul of universities is debate. And someone has to take the devil's side, if you like. They have to be the devil's advocate. More when it's an unpopular view. It's important that it is expounded and people get to understand it. I mean, in my case, my critique of transsexualism as it's currently being demonstrated is you go from one stereotype to another. And our fight is actually against the stereotype itself. So that the notion of blessed womanhood that is accepted by most transsexuals is not one that I agree with. I think it's profoundly wrong.
Thank you for your time and most importantly, your activism.
Okay, so let's leave it at that. That's funny. Because for the most part, what she said here, she sounds more like a modern, contemporary, anti-feminist you'd find on YouTube. If you look at a lot of her positions, right? The last part she just said about transsexuality there, or transgenderism. She sounds like a modern anti-feminist today. She has more in common with guys like Stefan Molyneux. Even though at the same time she holds these demonstrably nearly insane. I'd say insane if she did not stand to directly benefit from such positions. Opinions of women in terms of oppression under a patriarchal system. Wow, I mean, wasn't that a treat? That was an immense treat. I just had to do this video. It was just so much fun. Wow, I mean that and granted, she's not the only one. I mentioned Margaret Atwood, who I hate. She's a fucking terrible author. I was forced to read those fucking awful books. Well, relatively forced. They were encouraged by teachers growing up. Really shitty books. The worst thing you could do to a child growing up in terms of literature is forcing them to read god awful books akin to those written by the mistress of shit, Margaret Atwood. Women like Margaret Atwood. There's a few other pitches like Naomi Wolf actually have stayed sort of even keeled. They've been able to sort of navigate this the upcoming generation of wokeness and the old guard of feminism. They've been able to navigate these streets, these political avenues very well. But some women, who especially, I guess it depends on your age, because Wolf isn't that old. It depends on your age. If you're getting up there, you seem more like an anti-feminist compared to the modern day. I mean, you look at the monster you've created, and they don't recognize their progeny, or you don't recognize your progeny, and they don't recognize their progenitors. So you're at odds with each other, and the snake eats itself. Just as always with SJWs, with social justice activism, it always eats itself. It doesn't know what it's doing. It's internally illogically and just defunct. It's corrupt from the within. So at the end of the day, it always ends up eating itself. And it's a wonderful, lovely phenomenon to document, investigate, and have a cursory perusal on the internet anytime you have the free time to do so. So I encourage you to investigate more of these scenarios, or case in point, and have a good day.